Welcome back to CEEN Caribbean News. It's now time to go in depth. A relatively new mosquito-borne virus, the Zika virus, is prompting worldwide concern. The disease is spread by the aggressive Aedes aegypti mosquito, but what's alarming about this virus is that there is a suspected link to a neurological birth disorder known as microcephaly. The condition results in babies being born with unusually small heads and underdeveloped brains. Zika has been reported in approximately 24 countries in the Americas, including El Salvador, Brazil, Colombia, Guyana, Haiti, and Puerto Rico. These countries have warned pregnant women to be extremely careful and have urged women to put off pregnancy by at least a year. To help us understand this condition called microcephaly, we have been joined by President of the Medical Association of Jamaica, Dr. Merton Smith. Welcome to In Depth, Dr. Smith.
Thanks very much for having me, and good evening to your listeners.
Okay. Now, help us to understand just how devastating is microcephaly.
Okay. Well, microcephaly really means that the head of the newborn baby, and it actually starts within the womb, but the head of the newborn baby, which is, when we actually see the child, is actually much smaller than we would normally expect. And associated with the small head is actually a small brain. And what has happened is that some insult has occurred during pregnancy, typically during the first trimester, that has limited the brain development. Now, you can well understand that because the brain is actually the source of all thought, learning, and the origin of much of our motor activities, that a child born with microcephaly will actually be limited in terms of their own future development. They may not be self-caring. They may not be able to, just to take care of themselves and do daily procedures that we take for granted. However, the other thing that we need to bear in mind is that some of these babies may not be born at all. Some of them may actually die in the womb very early in the pregnancy. Some may actually be stillborn, and then some may be born, but then we have a child now who is developing with some lifelong dependency issues. So it can be very, very traumatic for the families of those babies.
So basically these babies, if they do live, aren't able to live normal lives.
That's right. It's a life of requiring significant care from, caregivers who are dedicated to taking care of them.
Now, if a mother is diagnosed with Zika, and is it possible for that unborn child to be prevented from contracting the virus?
Well, at the moment, we have no preventative measures, whether a vaccine or anything like that. We don't have anything like that at the moment. I think the general advice has been for these babies to be closely monitored using ultrasounds, and also you can actually draw some of the fluid that the baby is swimming in. We call it amniotic fluid, and you can test it to see whether or not they have the viral genetic material there. And then the mothers can make a decision. So that is the advice that has been given to pregnant mothers who have traveled to regions where the Zika virus is actually active. But bear in mind that what we have right now is really just some circumstantial evidence that there is a link. So we cannot say what percentage of women who are pregnant and then they get the Zika virus that their babies will be born with microcephaly. But, I think it is good advice to say that because we have so many unknowns and because the consequences of this is so severe and grave, it is good advice to, if possible, to delay pregnancy for at least a year or at least until we have a better handle on the Zika virus. I say if possible because we do know that there are some women who might at this moment be pregnant and perhaps don't even know that they're pregnant because it's early yet. And so to those mothers, we would say that, the same precautions that we give to everybody, which is to prevent yourselves from being bitten by the Aedes aegypti mosquito and limiting breeding sites and the other bits of advice that we give to those mothers as well.
For the sake of mothers, I know this period may be quite may have a psychological impact because you're already having a child, which is a difficult ordeal. But
right.
Women now who are pregnant, they must be feeling a bit terrified.
Yes, and one can understand that, which is why we're saying that we're not advocating panic, but what we are suggesting is that just as we normally would suggest for any pregnant woman, is that you make sure you attend your antenatal care, starting from your early booking once you discover that you're pregnant, and you follow through with your doctors, and you make sure that you have your ultrasounds done, which can help to assess what is happening with the developing fetus, the baby. And then, one can be informed as to what is happening to that developing baby.
The Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Margaret Chan, has announced that she's going to have a meeting on Monday in Geneva. Now, she's acting on the world stage. We have the Caribbean Public Health Authority Agency, CARPHA. What should the region be doing at this time to mobilize its people and to protect its citizens?
Well, we can probably just look at what is being done in the region and what is being done in Jamaica. What the region is doing, CARPA certainly, and PAHO, and the WHO, is that they're sending out constant advisories to the different ministries of health in the different countries, advising them on the spread of ZIKV, to say where cases have been identified. Also, as we learn more about the virus, how the symptoms are, would develop, and what are some of the complications, that information is being passed on. And also, that CARPA is a very important partner for us, because right now at the moment, we don't have any local labs that are approved to test for ZIKV. If we have suspected cases here, we have to send our samples at the moment to CARPA. So this is a very important linkage that we have. In terms of what the local Ministry of Health is doing, I think, several steps along the way they have tried to be proactive. So first of all, it is now a Class 1 reportable illness, which means that any healthcare provider, once you suspect that a patient has a case, you have to report it through the parish health department to the Ministry of Health. And that report goes along with a blood sample, which is then sent through the National Public Health Lab to CARPA for testing and confirmation. So that is one thing. Secondly, they're doing training for healthcare providers, and those who are not actually in a room getting the training, they're getting email updates as to how to recognize ZIKV and what to do if you suspect a case of ZIKV, so that we can, be prepared to deal with the cases. So these are, and then the third branch of everything is the public education campaign, where using the media, information is going out about how to get rid of the mosquitoes through elimination of the breeding sites, how to protect yourselves from mosquito bites using DEET and other mosquito repellents, and wearing long sleeves, and also using mosquito netting where possible. So all of this information is going out. I think perhaps one area that we need to work on right now is to prepare ourselves for some of the complications that we've heard about, that the nerve disorder called Guillain-Barré, where you have the weakness of the limbs and possibly the muscles that help to breathe. So if you have that, then you need to have sufficient intensive care units, spaces, so that patients can be admitted and be cared for. So that's another area that we need to look at in terms of dealing with what is now a pandemic.
The last time around, Jamaicans were impacted by the chikungunya virus, and now in less than a year, they're now going to be impacted by the Zika virus, because the health minister, Mr. Horace Dalley, says it's not a matter of if, it's a case of when Zika will get here. And one of the sticking points the last time was that a lot of persons did not take the precautions for the Zika virus seriously. No.
For the chick V.
For the chick V, rather, seriously. What do you say to Jamaicans now?
Well, it is even more important now with Zika V. One thing that we need to say, though, is that, interestingly enough, Zika V infection is actually milder than chick V in terms of the symptoms that you get. The fever is lower, the joint pains are not as severe, you do get the rash, and you do get the red eye with no pus coming from the eye, but the symptoms overall are generally milder from what we've been told. But a big part of the difference with this is, one, you have a lot of people who are actually carrying the virus and will show no symptoms, and so they will help to spread the infection across the country because they don't even know they're carrying the virus. They may not protect themselves from the mosquitoes, and they get bitten and it spreads. And then the other problem is, as we've said before, is the association with these major issues that we didn't see with the tick V, you know, the microcephaly and the Guillain-Barré syndrome. So this is going to be a major issue for us, and that is why it has caused such a dramatic stir worldwide. If it was just for the actual infection, which is so mild that after about 3 days, 2 days, the fever is gone. About 5 days, the rash is kind of fading, and most patients are, back about the business. If it was just for that, we wouldn't have all this buzz. But it's the other things that are associated with Zika V that is causing the buzz.
Well, I guess you and your other officials in the health sector must brace yourself for flood to your offices.
Yes, and as I said, we are dependent upon every single Jamaican to take some responsibility for helping to eliminate the mosquitoes, because unlike something like Ebola or one of those things, or something that is airborne, we know that this is carried by a mosquito. So we all need to try and play a role in eliminating the breeding sites and protecting ourselves from this mosquito.
Okay,
so
Dr.
That is one
Smith.
advantage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Smith.
You're most welcome.
Thanks so much for joining us.